a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes, where we're changing the world, wait for it, one Om at a time. This week on the Dr. Kevin Show, as we always do around this time of month, we have on our favorite astrologer, Rob Stewart from Inner Center, and we have one of my favorite co-hosts, Lori Powers-Otto, and we talk about what is the planetary influences for the upcoming month, what's going on and how it will affect you and how it can give you more information with which to make better decisions. And so we have a lot that we're going to talk about astrologically today, not only about what's coming up in our upcoming astrological period, but I know that Rob has been doing some look at the coronavirus and even the Spanish flu and some of the astrology around all of this. And I look forward to him sharing lots and lots of wisdom. If you have questions and you would like to be part of this conversation, you can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. If you are listening to this as a replay, you can go to mydrkevin.com. You can go to Facebook.com/mydrkevin, and you will see the posting for this show, and you can still ask questions or make comments on the timeline. And depending on who it's for, either Lori, Rob, or myself, we will get back to you. We will respond to those because we're those kind of people. Before I do my hot topic, because I'm still going to do a little bit of a hot topic, I tend to always do. I'd like to say welcome, Rob. Welcome, Lori. How are both of you tonight?
Wonderful.
Thanks, Dr. Kevin. Yeah, doing well.
Yeah.
Good. Neither one of you have gone absolutely crazy mad from your quarantine?
Oh, no.
Not yet.
I'm enjoying it.
Well, I think it makes a difference depending on how well one lives with oneself and how well one lives with whoever one may be living with through this quarantine.
There is that.
So my hot topic is I want to, I got kind of a little split at the last minute about the hot topic, and so I'm gonna go for the more positive one, the one that warms the cockles of my heart. Though there's a little irritation in it, but what can you say? Sometimes spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So it's about our ability to do little things and make a big difference. And, for some people in another week or 10 days or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, the quarantine is going to be over. Depending on what part of the country you live in, depending on whether your local government is more interested in making money or keeping people alive, you're going to be allowed to go out and, maybe take that ride for yourself and find out what these people who are suffering are going through. Maybe you'll get the joy of a ventilator so you can stuck, or an intertube stuck down your throat so you can have another $25 in your checking account, or you can look beautiful when they bury you because your hair got done. Maybe that will be it. But for a lot of people, recovery is going to be very slow. And their restaurants or their gyms or their bowling alleys or their hairdressing shops, they may not open up immediately. They're not going to open up here in New Hampshire on April 30th, and they may not open up on May 4th. I have to say, for the most part, I think we're pretty lucky in New Hampshire that they're being more or less responsible with saying, We're going to watch the numbers. We're going to see, does it make sense? Is it safe for our people? That's what I've been hearing, and I have great respect for that. Instead of putting a value of, let my people be a petri dish. So some people die, big deal. Let's open up those casinos, like they're saying in Las Vegas. But there's a lot of little things that we could do that could make a big difference. There are websites like Next Door Neighbor that connects people in neighborhoods. You can reach out through Facebook, or you can maybe even remember or have connected. And the thing I want to share was that, just before my gym closed, I connected with a young man who has a 2-year-old child and works a couple of jobs, works full-time doing stuff at the gym, not a great paying job, works a part-time job, hard worker, always working, always getting things done. And just before the gym closed, I said, just in case things get a little hairy, I can always find a few things that maybe need to be done around my house or my yard. Because I talked to him and I knew that he could do, he'd done some landscaping and done some other things. And I said, just in case it gets a little hairy. Well, last night he reached out to me. And the gym didn't do anything for him. So he filed for unemployment. They got 1 check and then 3 weeks of missed checks because there's some kind of technical glitch that nobody can figure out. The landlord's pounding at the door, and he basically said, is the offer still good? Is there any way I can make any money from you? And, and so he showed up today. We social distanced. I handed him some money. He's going to do some work for me coming up. He didn't need to do the work first because he needed money to buy diapers for his baby and food. And you know what? As I've said on this show, I'm an essential service right now. I'm working 6 days a week. And if it's making a difference in the world, I'm happy to do it. Maybe a little tired, maybe a little grouchy, but I'm happy to do it. But if I can hand some young man that will be working his tail off and is going to have to work his tail off for months to catch up, whose stimulus check hasn't showed up yet either, even though he filed, $50, $100 to do some stuff around the lawn that probably I could have done for myself. But there are so many little things that we can do for people that are suffering the most with this so that they don't have to go out and be protesting that we have to open up the country. And every day, my husband and I say our blessings and how lucky we are. And many of you out there are far more lucky than the people who are losing people, or the people who are scared to death home, who have the landlords pounding on the door, or wonder how they're going to buy food for their baby because their 2 or 3 part-time jobs that barely got them by, that savings, almost non-existent to start with, is gone, if they had any at all. And this is the richest country in the world. Yay, us. So think about it. Did you have a favorite waiter? Is there somebody that did some kind of service for you? Is there somebody that's out there that you know is locked down that for whatever reason you may have some access? Is there something you could do? Could they walk your dog for you? Could they rake a few leaves? Could they do something so they feel good about it? Not because you have to get something out of it, but because these people want to work. They want to work. They want to go out there and make their own way. And this virus is not letting them. But there are some of us that are very blessed and lucky. And we can make a huge difference with just a little bit of something. So what warmed the cockles of my heart? That this man put his pride aside and texted me and asked. And I know it was difficult for him. And I made it as easy as possible. It warmed the cockles of my heart that we can do the littlest of things and it can make the hugest of differences. And it made me a little hot under the collar that we have big companies cashing $50 million checks while people like this are wondering how they're going to feed their baby. So that's my hot topic. You guys can weigh in, or Rob, you can start the astrology, because as you can tell, I'm a little cranky tonight.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you, and well said, well said. Yeah, Laura, do you have anything to?
I was just going to say thank you to Kevin for sharing that, and for stepping up and helping this guy out, because you're right, there are little things we can do. I mean, it's true. Order from your favorite restaurant. Give it, maybe a little bigger tip, or I don't know. There's just so many ways that you can help, and I just love that you made that your hot topic, and that you lived it, not like some people who are just preaching it. You're actually living it, and thank you. That's all I wanted to say on that.
Yeah, and I tried not to make this story about me, because it's not about me, but thank you.
Right.
But it's about what all of us can do, and that we need to stay grateful, because there's all sorts of suffering out there for people that don't have any of the advantages that many people, to the sound of my voice right now, listening to this radio show, have. That the three of us have. As far as I know, none of us are homeless. None of us are going, okay, do I feed my kid or do I eat this week? None of us are in that place.
No.
But there are very real people that we like, people we know, people that wait on tables for us, or we're behind the counter at Starbucks, or we're somewhere that they were helping us. And I want to take these people with these signs that are whining and complaining, and I want to get my hair done, and I want to go bowling. You know what? You're so sick of quarantine. Let's put you right there on the front line. Let's put you at the hospital as a volunteer changing bedpans. You want something to do, honey? That gives you something to do. You want to, go out, and if you're so bored and you're so stuck, go out and help less fortunate, and stop being such a whiny baby about it. If you have time to run around and complain because you can't get your hair done and can break all the rules to carry a little sign, think what you could do that might have meaning in the world, maybe for the first time in your life.
Amen. Amen. I couldn't agree more.
So, Rob, what's going on astrologically that had me so wound up?
Well, yeah. So the sun was in Aries for a month there. It moved into Taurus April 19th, just a few days ago. And so, Sun in Aries, we get fired up. It's new beginnings, and getting fired up's not a bad thing. Obviously, clearly, with what you just described, and but yeah, Aries is about assertion and trailblazing and sort of stepping out, whereas Taurus, where we are today, is about energy returning to the center. It's about grounding, consolidating, finding self-reliance, self-sufficiency, rooting in the earth. And so there's a lot of themes about just slowing down, finding what is essential, as you were describing, Dr. Kevin. And so what values are important to us now? What are the things that we really value? Where do we want to spend our time, our energy, our attention, our money? So what you said is really goes along perfectly with this transition of the sun from Aries into Taurus. And, the sun is conjunct Uranus for the next week or so. And so there might be some sudden redefinitions for each of us in terms of what we value, in terms of our resources or where we're putting our resources, and what has been stuck or stagnant might be abruptly brought into motion. So there's some changes that are occurring over this next week And so just it's something for us all to pay attention to and notice. But yeah, so that's the sun entering Taurus. It's there obviously for a month. And we also have a new moon in Taurus just a couple of days ago on April 22nd. And so new moons are about new beginnings. And the moon was conjunct Uranus there as well. And so there, again, this sort of change in how do we spend our time, our money, our energy, new moon in Taurus, the things we value. Am I using my energy in the right way? And also the moon is square Saturn, which can bring sort of responsibility, lessons about maturity, and sometimes unexpected bumps in the road, things like that. So, but there's new beginnings here with a new moon in Taurus, and there's more of a focus on, for lack of a better word, it's like self-survival in a way, and sort of in its rawest form. But it's about what's important to me right now. What do I need in this moment to feel good about myself and who and what I am. So that's a new moon in Taurus. Feel free to interject at any time. I'll just kind of, this is the weatherman part of the show where I just kind of go through the weather.
Okay, well, going through the astrological weather. So, Lori, did you feel this change or shift? Did this show up anywhere, in any way in your life?
I'm still reflecting on that. I have some conflicting emotions about all of this. And I think that these astrological changes are trying to help me figure out how I really feel about things, as maybe opposed to how I think I should feel about things. Like, I get very angry at those protesters, and I know I shouldn't do that. That doesn't benefit anybody. So why am I angry at them? But I'm not as angry today as I was yesterday, so there you go.
Well, and I think yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's something that we can explore for a minute here. Is there is a lot of frustrated anger in general, and we're looking for places to put it.
Right.
When something like a pandemic hits, the amount of control the individual person has is very little. You can be in control of yourself, and you can choose to quarantine or not quarantine, wear face mask, not wear face mask. You can choose to be part of the solution or part of the problem with what's going on now, but so many bigger decisions are being made. And I think that one of the things that hits home is, I don't know how many people you guys know that you've lost to COVID, but, I know half a dozen. And I also know that some people's, I think that the frustration or the helplessness is that some people deciding to put their head in the sand could end up affecting somebody we love.
Yeah.
It could end up affecting somebody we know.
Exactly what I'm going through, because I do know, gosh, now it's got to be like 24 people that have died from this virus. So when people say that it's not real or it's not serious or they're going to take their chances, I really just want to punch them in the face. And that is not me. Anyone who knows me, that is not me. But it's because I see firsthand the loss this is causing. And not just people dying, but people losing their businesses and their incomes and their, everything. So, yeah, I think what you said is exactly how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's important to go to this break, and we'll be right back on the Dr. Kevin Show to talk more about the upcoming planetary influences and who does Lori want to punch out next.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
A social distancing tip.
While the CDC urges you to avoid close contact, like hugging or shaking hands, there are other non-physical ways to say hello. Wave, wink, use sign language, salute, smile, give the peace sign, throw up an air high five, do jazz hands. Remember, stay a minimum of 6 feet or 2 arms length away from others, and stay home if you can. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. Remember, if you'd like to be part of this conversation, you can call in at 202-570-7057. Again, that's 202-570-7057. Before you continue with your astrological weather forecast, Rob, so are you having any urges to punch people out? I'm just curious.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
You're asking me? Oh,
yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't put it that way. I wouldn't put it that way, but I mean, I feel like, and we'll get into this with sort of the birth chart of the COVID-19 thing. Everybody's going through a different journey. There's a lot of different types of journeys people are going through, and so people are going to perceive this in different ways, and in a way that's the challenge of a thing like this, and the other way, it's like there's no, it's kind of life, and it's hard, and it's challenging, and it's just part of the journey. And how do we work with this? And that in this sort of the birth chart, so to speak, of the COVID-19 really speaks to those types of themes that are being brought up right now. And I think it's important for us to remember, and this stuff is being brought up for us to work through, and it's not fun. It's a evolutionary event.
Well, and I think one of the things I want to make, and then we'll get back to the astrological weather forecast, so to speak. I love that term now that you've given it to me. Is that as with all things? I mean, I did a service today called "May You Live in Interesting Times," an ancient Chinese curse, and of course it invites us to grow and it invites us to evolve and change. But I think one of the things that is important is to not suppress or negate any mix of feelings you have coming up as not appropriate. The feelings are appropriate to have. It's always what you do about them. I mean, you know, if that sign I saw, I want to get my hair done, if it had been on a personal Facebook page, there was a little part of me that would have posted, honey, you need a whole lot more help than getting your hair done. You know, because yes, I'm frustrated, and I'm frustrated at people that are putting other people's lives at risk that have to go to work in an essential service, even if it's making barely above minimum wage because they can't afford not to as they're checking your groceries out and you're whining. But own the feeling and then work on it and look at it and say, well, what's that telling me and what can I do and stuff like this. But I think the big danger, especially for people who consider themselves spiritual, is to say, well, but I shouldn't feel like that. I shouldn't feel like that. To try to suppress it, you know, to try to say, well, you know, that's not a very Christian thing to say, or that's, you know, to beat yourself up. No, have the feeling and express it to somebody that you can trust to say, that doesn't make you a bad person. It would make you a bad person if you went and you strangled them. Well, that would be questionable. Depending on who it was, might make you a good person. There's a couple people that I think I'd like to see you strangle, but you know what I'm saying. So Rob, anyways, so good for you, Lori.
And I totally agree. You know, expressing those emotions, that all emotions are understandable. That's what, you know, that's understandable. They came from a understandable perspective from the perceiver. And so, yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree with what you said there. It can be easy to bypass things as well. Next up in the weather forecast is Mercury entering Taurus on April 28th, here in a couple days. And so Mercury represents the mind, thought, communication, how we conceptualize things. And so Mercury was in Aries before this, and that can bring about some really sort of assertive, fiery, defensive energies this past month. And I'm sure it's come out, you know, this is kind of what the whole conversation has been about, you know, and so it's no mystery that that's been sort of in the collective in a big way. And also Chiron is Chiron is in Aries, which often brings sort of, you know, not sure if we can assert ourselves at times, like a time in which you want to speak and assert oneself, but we might worry about what the others might think and sort of hold back that instinctual, like, you know, assertion. So Chiron in Aries really brings this sort of, you know, we all might be sort of censoring ourselves in some ways, which, you know, of course, you know, I mean, that is what it is. I guess, you know, sometimes it calls for that, of course, but it's just something to be aware of that we're all sort of moving through, and to just be mindful of.
Well, one of the things that I often say to my clients, students that I'm working with, is that sometimes you have to make a choice. Do I want to say what I want to say the way I want to say it, and it will make me feel better? Like, do I want to holler it, or do I want to be mean with it, or do I want to get in somebody's face? Or is it more important to say it in a way in which they can hear it? And neither is a wrong choice, but make the choice consciously. Consciously say, I don't care whether they get it or not. I need to get this off the chest. This is for me. But if it's for them, then you have to go, how are they going to hear this best? And to be very aware and make that delineation. So anyways, I will let you continue the weather forecast now.
Right. Yeah, and that's a really good point. You know, I forgot where I heard it, but sort of one measure of communication, you know, clearly there's times where we have to get something off the chest, and you do it for you. For me, I do it for me, to use the speaking for me. But, you know, one way of judging how we've done in communication is how it, you know, was it communicated? Did they hear it? You know, when we come out in sometimes an assertive, aggressive way, it's not heard, it's not listened to, it's not communicated, in fact. So yeah, those sort of things were a big theme this past month. But now with Mercury in Taurus, it's about concrete, practical thinking. There's sort of a survival aspect to Taurus. What do I need to think about and communicate to get my basic needs met, to communicate to others. And sometimes with Mercury and Taurus, we do put the sort of blinders on and sort of trudge forward in tunnel vision, which is of course called for at times. Just simplifying things to get eyes on the goal and go for it. So Mercury in Taurus is a great time to think about things in sort of a slow, stabilizing way, figuring out what truly matters to each of us, and becoming more self-reliant in our thinking and communicating. And then Mercury enters Gemini on May 12th, so it's only in Taurus for a couple of weeks. Enters Gemini, and that's a very communicative, very curious, very sociable time. I mean, that's the home of Mercury, so it's just, it's a type of time where you just might just be, drinking in so much information that's sort of superficial types of knowledge, maybe not diving deep on one topic, but just kind of, spray painting the globe with, information and all that. And there's a reason and purpose for that as well. But we could be sort of easily distractible with Mercury and Gemini, but also get a lot done with the mind. And that's until May 28th. And then, let's see. So then there's a full moon in Scorpio on May 7th. And so this is, again, going back to this conversation that we've been having, full moon in Scorpio is about, we get the opportunity to acknowledge these subconscious emotions that we have, the fear, the pain, the anger, the grief, all these sort of, I wish I didn't have this type of emotion, which are there, and they're there for reasons. The full moon in Scorpio is an opportunity to acknowledge and feel. Just going back to everything that you guys have been sharing, this is May 7th. The full moon in Scorpio is really time to be there for oneself in those ways. So Scorpio has depth, intensity, and if we're willing to feel what comes up and acknowledge those parts of ourselves that are hurt and misunderstood, we're really working with those energies in a positive way. So it's a time to stay grounded, to feel into the grief, the anger, the sadness, the disempowerment, whatever it is, and observe, acknowledge, welcome. Those are the types of energies that really support the full moon in Scorpio.
Okay, so everybody, just so the two of you know, May 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe even May 9th, you want to avoid me. This is going to play with my moon in Scorpio, and I'm sure I will probably not be pleasant to be around.
You're always pleasant to be around, even when you're cranky pants.
Yeah. Hey, well, I think you won't be alone. I think with everything going on in the world right now, I think it's going to be a time, a good time to quarantine. I don't know if the quarantine will still be there or what. I don't know how that works, but it's a good time to quarantine and meet, be there for oneself, see what, be there for the inner child and honor those emotions that we have.
So that means the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to turn all my social media off for those 3 days, just letting everyone know. So go ahead.
All right. Okay. So, I think that's a good move. Okay. So there's a Venus retrograde in Gemini, and we'll just kind of breeze through this here. But the retrograde in Gemini for Venus is on May 13th to the June 21st. And so Venus is about desire, about love, beauty, what we value, attraction, things like that. And Gemini is about curiosity. We can be sort of distractible in Gemini. So with Venus and Gemini, we can be sort of attracted to information, to the mind, technology. We might be easily we might be into many things at the same time. And, Venus retrogrades, they occur every year and a half. And sometimes it can bring stagnation in things in areas of love or money, sometimes. But also there's sort of this faded aspect to Venus retrograde in terms of when planets go retrograde, oftentimes there's larger forces at play, sort of some faded events. We're sort of guided in ways that we're not usually guided. So Venus retrogrades, sometimes there can be sort of faded events in the areas of friendship, relationship, even in finances. And, just to flow with that, and it's a time of sort of breaking up old patterns and creating new, more healthy ways of in those areas of life. So that's Venus retrograde in Gemini.
Could it also be a time when an old relationship, an old intense relationship that may have fallen to the wayside tends to make its appearance again? Would that be also one of the aspects of this?
Yeah, I mean, old relationships, friendships can be brought up for healing and closure. Different, sort of old things can be brought up to be dealt with and mature and, in loving ways. So yes.
Okay. What else do we have on the weather forecast there?
Yeah, so that's all I have for the weather.
Meteorologist Rob.
Right. If I had a map and pointed to the, all right. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have for the weather forecast, so to speak.
Okay. So, and the weather is changing, and when you come back, the sun is going to be shining to illuminate COVID-19 astrologically, and a little bit of rumba from the Spanish influenza with our own Rob Stewart, and we'll be right back.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
911, what is your emergency?
My kid shot himself.
All right, where's the wounds?
911, what's your emergency?
Please help, my son shot his brother.
911, what is your emergency?
Okay.
911, please state your emergency.
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns.
It wasn't locked.
Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show. This is our Planetary Influences Week with Lori Powers-Otto and our favorite astrologer, Rob Stewart from Inner Center. And Rob, the rest of this time is all yours to tell us about the astrology of COVID and whatever you can share also that you found out about the Spanish flu and the similarities. You're up. Go.
All right. Well, thanks. I mean, there's a lot, and we'll cover what we can, and we won't what we won't. But so I take a sort of an evolutionary astrology viewpoint on this, and So evolutionary astrology points to the themes which our soul has intended for our own personal development and evolution. And so it speaks to why am I here and what are my lessons from an astrological perspective. It's based on the idea that there's no random occurrences in life and that we sort of incarnate from lifetime to lifetime and attract the lessons and the curriculum that we need to evolve through and to evolve as beings. And so there's many forms of evolutionary astrology, but it was sort of the term, and it was really originated by a man named Jeffrey Wolf Green and also Stephen Forrest. And so if anyone's interested in this type of astrology, I recommend they go check those guys out. There's also Tom Jacobs is also another evolutionary astrology that I really resonate with. But so, when we look at COVID-19 from an evolutionary standpoint, we're looking at what type of evolution does it bring towards to the collective consciousness. And so there's two different types of evolution. There's very slow evolution and there's cataclysmic event. And most of our lives are following the slow type of evolution. But once in a while, there's these sort of cataclysmic events thrown in. And so with COVID-19, obviously, it's affected people worldwide. It brings evolutionary potential for everybody. And the other thing I want to make clear is that when we talk about these things from an astrological viewpoint, we're speaking about energetic archetypes and metaphors. Obviously, this is not a medical discussion by any stretch of the imagination. This isn't talking about a virus. This isn't talking about any of those sort of biological things. We're simply talking about metaphors, themes of evolution. And so what are the themes that the COVID-19 has brought to the collective consciousness? And again, this is my take on what it brings to the collective consciousness based on evolutionary astrology, and I encourage people to look at, there's a lot of other people that are looking at this sort of thing. And so, with evolutionary astrology, Pluto is the central story. Pluto represents the themes that we are empowered by. It's an empowerment journey, what Pluto points to. And so wherever Pluto is in the natal chart, it's places where we feel overpowered by others. It's a place of gaining and losing power. It's a place where we feel blocked from having power. And so we're unavoidably pulled to where our Pluto is in our chart. It's something that it brings up fear, it brings up pain, it brings up, like Laurie said, wanting to punch people, all these things. And I say that jokingly, I get what you mean. With that, I want to make it clear. But it's something we have to work through. It's something we have to do for evolution. And so, I looked at this for the Spanish flu and for COVID-19, and it's absolutely fascinating. They're slightly different stories, but they do have a lot of similarities. And I guess, should we start with COVID-19 and go from there? Probably.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So for the COVID-19, the date I picked was December 31st, 2019. This was the first official date that in China, in Wuhan, China, where they reported an unknown virus to the WHO in China. There was some evidence of earlier instances. The earliest cases there was one in this November 17th, 2019. But I went with the first official documented mention of this sort of unknown thing occurring. And so in that natal chart, Pluto, and I don't have a specific time, so this is just based on, there's no houses, there's no ascendant in the natal chart that I'm using for COVID-19. But Pluto is in Capricorn, and it's conjunct Saturn and Ceres. And so when Pluto is in Capricorn, it has to do with authority, it has to do with social positions in society, it has to do with maturity and being responsible. And it also, there can be themes of suppression and fear. But it has to do with structure and laws. And so the empowerment journey with Pluto and Capricorn involves sort of, as COVID-19 brings us to the collective consciousness, it's about learning how do we integrate our own philosophies within the larger structure of society in a responsible, mature way. Again, this is according to this perspective in astrology. So it's about learning how to be socially responsible and practical, but without being oppressive, without being controlling. And so, with Pluto and Capricorn, there can be a tendency to rely on manipulation and sort of beating the system to achieve personal goals. There might be, like the ends justify the means type of approach. And this is sort of common with the Pluto and Capricorn. For instance, Nixon had Pluto in the 10th house, which is ruled by Capricorn. So, it brings these sort of power struggles and these type of things to the collective consciousness. So the questions one can ask, we can ask ourselves during this time is am I being true to myself? Or am I desiring social power and status? This is something, that we can really look into and, look in a deep way. Sometimes it shows up in subtle ways or in bigger ways. But a lot of the themes that the virus brings up for the collective consciousness is related to power and powerlessness, sometimes abuse of power, and learning to be responsible with our own actions. And so Pluto, we look at the aspects of Pluto to give specifics on this empowerment journey that COVID-19 brings to the collective consciousness. And Pluto's conjunct Saturn, which is about a deconstruction of old systems and structures that no longer serve us. So again, this will manifest differently for each of us. For some, it might involve creating some new structure in society, and for others, it might involve deconstructing systems that just no longer work. But whatever it is for people, it involves maturity, it involves responsibility, and moving away from controlling patterns in ourselves. So it's something, it brings out, brings out the best and worst of us. That's just kind of how evolution works, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. But on the sort of the lower side of Capricorn with Pluto and Saturn conjunct there, it can bring out suppression, it can bring out control, competition, and manipulation. And so it's likely that those sort of themes will be coming up and are brought up for the collective consciousness to work through. And so there's a stellium of 5 planets in Capricorn in this sort of COVID-19 birth chart, if you were to put it that way. And they're in a balsamic phase to the planet Pluto. And so this is a completion of a cycle, which often involves like a big crisis. And related to Pluto and Capricorn, we are next year, 2021, we are reaching a Pluto return to the United States Pluto in its birth chart. So, July 4th, 1776 was the U.S.'s birth in the birth chart. 250 years later or so, here we are, Pluto has come to its return, which brings deep transformation. It brings deep excavation in the structures in this country. And so there are, for better or for worse, there's massive changes underway in the system, breaking down of old structures. And so astrologically, this is a pretty unique time for the United States. So Pluto is also conjunct the asteroid Ceres, which is the Earth Mother. And so themes of how do we nurture ourselves? How do we nurture others? Sometimes Ceres represents helping others for a long period of time and then realizing we have to reclaim the willingness to take care of ourselves. So there's like this, learning lessons about, I have to fill my own tank. Otherwise, like I may not actually be helping someone. I have to fill my tank so that I can help another person. These types of themes might be really coming out for people. And the other thing with Ceres conjunct Pluto and Saturn is that we might occasionally associate nurturing with control and heightened use of power. With Capricorn, the themes of power is a huge theme, and how we use leadership and power in positive ways. So those themes are being brought to the surface with all this. And another aspect that Pluto makes is a square with Eris, that dwarfed planet. And Eris is a rule breaker. Eris's discovery in 2005 made us change the way we classified planets. Eris didn't fit into any category, and so as a result, we had to reclassify Pluto. Like Pluto was no longer a planet due to the discovery and the classification of Eris. And so with Pluto square Eris, what that means for this empowerment journey for the collective consciousness, it means that, of stepping off the beaten path. It involves making difficult decisions and stepping away from the competition and doctrine and unfair things in society. These types of themes might bring up a lot of friction, but it's part of the journey. So to chart one's own path, it's sort of Eris is it's like the strong feminine energy of doing what is, breaking away from tradition, doing what's right from the center of one's being. And so to get a general sense of how the COVID-19 energies, so to speak, affect your own life, you can look at your own natal chart and see where Capricorn falls in the chart, and also the themes of your 10th house, and also where the themes related to Saturn. Those areas might speak to a lot of the issues and themes in which this event is bringing up in your life. And so, let's see. And so, the other thing I want to mention is, the south node of the moon represents the needs and wants and the worldview from which this issue came from. So the south node of the moon represents the worldview that brought about the need for this evolution. And the north node of the moon is where we're evolving towards. And so the old patterns that brought about this evolution, again, from this perspective, is represented by the south node in Capricorn that's conjunct the Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury. And this suggests that the need for the collective consciousness to evolve, it comes from this place of being loud and self-centered, of communicating from a self-centered place, of taking up space and orbiting around certain beliefs and old ways of thinking. It's a place where decisions are made from a corporate type of perspective. And where we're evolving towards, with the north node of the moon in Cancer, is where we connect with our human emotions and feelings. And it's a place of helping ourselves and others from a heart center, and not from, greed, competition, those old I can never say this word, patriarchal society, excuse me. So we still got time. I don't want them to have to really cut me off. It's okay if you do. But there's some big themes here also where, so the moon in the birth chart can be looked at as the vehicle or bridge from which we bridge from the south node to the north node. And so it represents the needs and the wants of the collective consciousness, and it's in Pisces. And so there's this need and want for people, the collective consciousness, to surrender and merge with the collective. But for better or for worse, it's conjunct the asteroid Echo and Nessus. And what this means is that there might be themes of voicelessness that's occurring for people in this evolutionary process. And also with Nessus there's a possibility that the collective consciousness is attracting some types of manipulation to evolve through. And so, these are just things to be mindful of. the themes of feeling voiceless, or themes of, of attracting some types of manipulation. And from an evolutionary perspective, we're just, this is just part of the journey. But the sort of intention based on this birth chart, again, this is just from this evolutionary perspective, is about finding internal security. It's represented by the polarity point in Cancer. And so it's about reconnecting with the human emotions, nurturing our inner child, fulfilling our ambitions in non-manipulative ways, and finding what brings peace and stability in the center of our being. And so in general, you can look at your own chart and look at the sign of Cancer and where that falls in your chart, the fourth house and the moon. And by working with those energies, embracing those themes, those are ways you can really work forward with this global crisis.
Okay, so Rob, I know we're going to be hearing the music any minute now.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to look at the schedules for the next few weeks, and we're going to see about having you back before the next time to finish up these, talk about the Spanish, and give us some examples, and I will volunteer my chart for you to work with. How's that?
All right, yeah, we'll talk offline and set it up.
See, Laura, you in for a special round of this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so pay attention. I'm gonna procure Rob for a special show just to go into this a little bit more depth, a little bit more.